Good evening, and welcome to the September 5 meeting of the Ann Arbor City Council. If you are able, please rise and join us for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would the clerk please call the roll of council?
Councilmember Kyle Sapathy? Here. Councilmember Frenzel? Present. Councilmember Westfall?
Here.
Councilmember Lum? Here. Councilmember Grand?
Here.
Councilmember Ackerman?
Here.
Mayor Taylor?
Here.
Councilmember Eaton?
Here.
Councilmember Crapel?
Here.
Councilmember Warpowski?
Here.
Councilmember Smith?
Present.
We have a quorum.
May I have a motion, please, to approve the agenda? Moved by Councilmember Westfall, seconded by Councilmember Grand. Discussion of the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The agenda is approved. We have communications today from our city administrator.
Just a few, Mayor. I would like to congratulate the Public Services team, both the Stadium Boulevard reconstruction project and Nixon Green to Varn intersection projects were completed on time, and they're open before the start of school. I'd like to make council aware of some upcoming events. We do have a work session next Monday, the topic being city revenue. In October, we will focus on emergency management, and then in November, we have the joint meeting with the DDA board to talk about parking. Our officer who is here to support us this evening is Officer Elizabeth Cornell, and that's all I have.
Thank you. We now come to public comment reserve time. Public comment reserve time is an opportunity for members of the public to speak to council and the community about matters of municipal interest. To speak at public comment reserve time, one needs to have signed up in advance by contacting the city clerk. Speakers have 3 minutes in which to speak, so please pay close attention to the time clock. As a matter of courtesy, we have only one person speaking at a time, and speakers are not allowed to delegate their time to others. Finally, if you require assistance in speaking before council, we'd be delighted to provide it to you. Our first speaker today is Kermit Schlansker.
The energy farm is the best project that could be built in an effort to simultaneously combat global warming, sustainability, and poverty. It will start as a farm and end up as a small town where people can live most of their lives. The physical characteristics of the farm are merely an engineer's concept of the frugal life that can last 1,000 years. The initial farm could consist of a 12-unit apartment building on 10 acres of land, but preferably more. The apartment building is chosen over houses because apartments with shared walls and ceilings will give at least a 50% heating energy reduction as compared to houses by geometry alone. With better insulation, this will give a still better result and will be close to a 70% reduction in heating energy. Solar energy of various kinds will take care of much of the remainder, and wind energy from small windmills will help. Biomass energy from several sources will take care of the rest. The types of solar energy that will be used are solar voltaic, solar mirrors beamed onto windows, solar mirrored heat and power plants using a steam engine, solar powered distillation of ethanol, water, and other chemicals, and pasteurization of sewage. Solar energy with two-stage heat pumps can be made to store and reduce and use earth heat. An attempt will be made to manufacture and sell small windmills that compress air or refrigerants. Compressed air is useful for many things. Dirty fertilizers, such as from septic tanks, will be used for energy crops. The organic medicines in the energy crops will be burned when these crops are used for fuel, and the ashes can then be used as fertilizer for food crops. Ashes, sewage, and manures will be used for fertilizer. Solid waste will be burned in pollution-free stoves that create steam for steam engines, gas for internal combustion engines, or gas for making liquid fuels. This will save the city a lot of money. And an eternal factory will make jobs, and a general store will sell goods. Both will save car travel and gasoline. The project will meet the needs of a global warming project, a jobs project, a homeless project, and an affordable housing project. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there communications from council? Councilmember Lum.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a comment and a question related to the Nixon corridor. First, I'd like to thank Mr. Hutchinson, Igor Koltiar, and their team for, Mr. Hupy and their team for completing the Nixon Green Duran Roundabout on schedule. It's been a major project, as we all know, with a significant disruption to traffic flow, particularly those folks who live on Nixon north of the intersection. Anyway, as has been shared by the administrator, the intersection is now reopened. I drove through it yesterday a couple of times, just to, you know, it was a special event, just to experience it. And I've been out there a few other times. I know my colleague, Mr. Westfall, has been there as well. But we'll say the team did a really nice job. There's a bit more sidewalk work to do, but it's largely complete and on schedule. So I'm hearing a lot of positive feedback from neighbors and compliments about both the intersection, also the nice street lights that are now lighting the originally called the Safe Walks to School path to Clegg that we built a few years back, but were unable to light. And the street lights are wonderful. I mean, it's really, I know there are people tonight who are going to, enjoy it again, and been, eagerly waiting for those lights. And then, of course, we redid the asphalt paths that desperately needed to be reconstructed on Green Road. So all in all, great work, and it is sincerely appreciated. And then a question for you, Mr. Lazarus or Mr. Hupy, if he's around, whoever wants to speak to it. My question is a follow-up on the resolution council passed back in May on coordinating the other two projects on Nixon. One, the corridor improvements project, and two, the DTE transmission line project. That resolution directed you, Mr. Lazarus, to provide recommendations and plans to City Council by August 31st. And the intent was to coordinate the two projects to minimize disruption in the area and take advantage of DTE's obligations related to the project. So your memo on Friday updated us on all the road projects, and in it you also mentioned that there would be work on the DTE project later this year. So given all that, can you please let us know when we can expect to see the recommendations and plans and that council requested in that resolution?
Well, I'm not prepared to discuss that right now, but I will live up to the direction from council and look to get you a response on those other two questions within the next week.
Okay, just, the recommendations and plans, and when we can see that, that would be great, when you can get that to us. Thank you.
Further communication from council. Councilmember Eaton.
Thank you. I have a couple of things. First, I wanted to announce to the public that there will be a public participation meeting about a proposed development for the 430 South Maple site. That's the site of the previous 42 North development. The meeting will be on Wednesday, tomorrow, September 6th, starting at 6:30 at the Pittsfield branch of the Public Library. The developer is proposing a multi-unit development that will cover most of 20 acres. And I encourage interested citizens to show up and comment on that proposal. The second thing is I want to announce that next meeting I will be bringing forward a resolution seeking the review of our pedestrian ordinance by our Transportation Committee and by our Policy Committee in light of recent developments. We've seen from our consultants' efforts in selective enforcement of this ordinance that many people are just simply unaware of what our ordinance requires. Nearly 400 citations have been issued. We have so many visitors to this city every day that we really are expecting people to know intuitively, apparently, about our unique ordinance. And that causes me great concern that the experiment in enforcement has shown how little awareness there seems to be. Now, another reason to review the ordinance is the rapidly advancing technology of autonomous vehicles. The way that autonomous vehicles will need to interact with pedestrians in our city will be different than in other communities because we have a unique ordinance. And it's difficult to foresee them programming a vehicle that will stop every time it encounters a pedestrian standing on a curb. That doesn't seem workable. Another issue I have with our pedestrian ordinance is that simultaneous to us having this ordinance, the city is removing crosswalk ramps in neighborhoods and on streets. And we really need to clearly define what we mean by a crosswalk, because if we remove a crosswalk ramp, most pedestrians will continue to use that spot to cross because they always have, but people in a wheelchair or people who are visually limited will be dissuaded from using that and have to go search for another crosswalk. So in my resolution at the next meeting, I'll be asking our Transportation Committee to review any reports that we have from professional engineering staff evaluating our pedestrian ordinance. We should have a clear definition of what crosswalk means. Our practice is to have little and sometimes no markings for some crosswalks, and at other crosswalks there's elaborate yet almost unique marking at each different crosswalk. I'd also like to see a discussion of the reasoning behind the removal of crosswalk ramps and a discussion of autonomous vehicles interacting with our ordinance. I also encourage the city administrator to bring our ordinance and the subject of pedestrian safety to our policy committee, because I believe the best way to address pedestrian safety is at the state level, so that we have a uniform law that covers all communities in the state, and we aren't the outlier. We aren't expecting something different than every other community in this state. Thank you very much.
Further communications from council. Councilmember Kalasapati.
I too would like to thank staff for the timely completion of the Nixon-Dubarton intersection, but I really would like to thank the residents too, because I saw them driving after work. I mean, a lot of them made it right before the closing of the bell or whatever, when during election. I mean, they had to go all the way around to come to Clegg. It took them like 35 minutes because the Dubarton intersection. So residents did make a great effort, and they were patient, and they were patient. So I would like to thank residents, and it does look beautiful. Thank you.
Councilmember Grant.
Thank you. Happy first day of school, everyone. And with that in mind, I'd just like to thank the Ann Arbor Police Department for their increased crosswalk enforcement over these few days. As a parent of a child who has now reached the age where she is too cool to walk with parents, otherwise known as middle school, I really do appreciate the increased enforcement and see the tickets in areas that we knew were problematic as a real gain for our city and the safety of our kids. So I'm pleased to see this enforcement, which many of us on council have asked for, and encourage residents to be extra careful now that there are lots of little people and bigger people looking in their phones walking to school.
Further communication from council. Councilmember Warpahowski.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. Two items. First of all, to just add on to the thanks and praise for the work that was done prior to the start of the school season, I want to thank staff and contractors for all the gateway treatments, the crosswalk markings that have gone in, for example, the ones over by Ann Arbor Open and in a lot of other places throughout the city. I've really seen how they help draw attention to the crosswalk for motorists. They are affecting traffic flow and pedestrian safety. And there's a lot of other things, the bump outs on Division, for example, by Ann Arbor Open. So it was a lot of work, and to see it all done and rolled out in time for school to start is fantastic. I know some of these were racing to beat the deadline, so I'm glad that all of that came through. The second item that I wanted to bring to council's attention and to sort of get the pulse of council on, as it were, is that the Washtenaw County regularly hosts blood drives over at their North Main Administration Building. And I think it might be worth having a little friendly challenge between the city council and the Washtenaw County Board of Commissioners on a blood battle. Let's see who can raise, which entity is
like
most
it.
willing to give of themselves. I recognize that there are some people, for medical reasons, travel history, mad cow disease, or whatever, that wouldn't be able to participate. So for those, my suggestion would be that if they can't give blood themselves for a medical reason, they're not eligible to give blood, they could find a substitute to give for them. Stakes, haven't decided yet. I've had some conversations with County Board Chair Andy Labar about Loser does a service day at the park facility of the winner's choice. But if anybody has suggestions for that, I'd be open to them. So if people think this is a horrible idea and we should absolutely not do it, let me know soon. Otherwise, I will go forward with talks with the county board chair and see if we can get a friendly competition going. The date of their next blood drive is October 20th. So those are my communications. Thank you.
Further communications from council. I'd like to recommend the following nomination for your consideration to the Housing and Human Services Advisory Board, Thaddeus Yabzanka. We now come to our consent agenda. May I have a motion, please, to approve the consent agenda? Moved by Councilmember Ackerman, seconded by, oh, is it up today? Did I miss that? Or is that for consideration? My apologies, that's moved for the next meeting. So I'd also, thank you, Councilmember Eaton. I'd like to note the resolution to appoint Thomas Wright to the Cable Communications Commission for your consideration at our next meeting. Thank you. We now really, truly are at the consent agenda. I believe Councilmember Ackerman and seconded by Councilmember Crapel. Discussion, please, of the consent agenda. Councilmember Lum.
Thank you. CA 17, no need to pull it out. Just have a couple questions. I see Mr. Suchek is here. This is the fiber agreement. So we were provided today the AATA, DDA, and district library agreements. I looked at them. They you know, from my take is they seem to be structured well, and it's appropriate to, that the other users of the network pay the city an annual fee, usage fee, and pay all the costs related to their connecting to the network. I also think it's appropriate for other users to reimburse the city for a share of the costs the city incurred in constructing the network. So I was a bit surprised to see that we're waiving these one-time fees for these 3 users. So I'm wondering if someone could speak to the rationale for waiving these fees. I see, he just appeared.
I'm sorry. Oh, there he is.
Mr. Crawford?
Yeah,
Did you- Oh,
as far as the fees, there are existing users on our Comcast network. And so we felt that it was important for them to continue to use the fiber network as they have for the past 15 years.
But the cost that we incurred for constructing?
The cost that we
Those
incurred for
fees that are being
constructing.
waived?
Yeah, they will pay their fee for their portion of their lateral connection to the network. So they will incur the cost for the construction that was incurred to get to their
I
site.
didn't see that in the
from our-
agreements. I saw that
Pardon?
we're waiving those reimbursement costs.
Yeah, those were in those were in a prior resolution. So there were, I believe, about $324,000 in costs that were going to be reimbursed in a previous resolution when we did the construction.
Yeah, and this is for the construction,
For the construction, yes.
okay?
Oh, yeah.
Excuse me, Councilmember Lum, if I could just add to clarify, I've got a cough tonight, sorry. The initial construction costs were funded primarily of the whole ring, were funded primarily from our CTN franchise fees, supplemented some by our IT fund. That's how the project was funded. The additional construction costs that are referred to in what you were just referring to, these laterals, are from the ring to an individual property, and those funds are being paid for by the entity who needs to connect to the
Okay.
ring.
I mean, I see them like hookup fees, you know, with utilities.
This
and-
is kind of a hookup
Okay,
fee,
so
but
it's
it actually
being treated
does.
the same way?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And then also while you're there, any information or news about other entities that might be connecting and when that's likely to occur?
We are, we anticipate coming back to council soon with some additional information about some other interested parties. So yes, we do have people who are interested
Other,
in connecting.
okay, large entities? Or,
I mean, have at varying levels of conversation, interests from some other government-related entities, and we want to bring back some non-governmental, some rules that might work around some non-governmental entities.
okay, thank you. And that'll be coming to us in a few
As
months'
soon as we
time?
get something prepared for you.
Relatively soon?
Mhm. So we focused exclusively on the governmental entities tonight, since those are presently on our INET and are most critical to get connected, and then our attention will focus on the next.
Okay, thank you.
Further discussion of the consent agenda? Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The consent agenda is approved by unanimous vote with 11 council members present, thus satisfying the 8-vote requirement with respect to CA3, CA4, CA5, CA6, CA15. We now come to our public hearing. Public hearings are opportunities for members of the public to speak to council and the community about a specific matter on the agenda. Your speech at a public hearing must relate to the specific matter on the agenda. To speak at a public hearing, you need not have signed up in advance. Speakers have 3 minutes in which to speak, so please pay close attention to the time clock. As a matter of courtesy, we may have only one person speaking at a time. And finally, if you require assistance in speaking before council, we'd be delighted to provide it to you. Public hearing number 1, an ordinance to amend sections 1553, 1555, and 1605 of Chapter 18, Employees Retirement System, Title I of the Code of the City of Ann Arbor, to limit participation by certain part-time employees, to implement changes required by federal law related to military service, and to correct a scrivener's error. Is there anyone who'd like to speak at this public hearing? Seeing no one, this public hearing is closed. We have before us the regular session meeting minutes of August 21, 2017. May I have a motion, please, to approve the minutes? Moved by Councilmember Frenzel, seconded by Councilmember Ackerman. Discussion of the minutes. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The minutes are approved. B1, an ordinance to amend sections 1553, 1555, and 1605 of Chapter 18, Employees Retirement System, Title I of the Code of the City of Ann Arbor, to limit participation by certain part-time employees, to implement changes required by federal law related to military service, and to correct a scrivener's error. Moved by Councilmember Lum, seconded by Councilmember Grand. Discussion, please, of B1. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? It is approved. C1, an ordinance to amend Section 970 of Chapter 108, disorderly conduct of Title IX of the Code of the City of Ann Arbor. Moved by Councilmember Warpechowski, seconded by Councilmember Crapel. Discussion, please, of C1. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? It is approved. DC1, resolution authorizing the City of Ann Arbor to be listed as a supporting municipality in an amicus brief to be filed with the United States Supreme Court in State of Hawaii and Ishmael El-Sheikh versus Donald J. Trump et al. Moved by Councilmember Warpechowski, seconded by Councilmember Smith. Discussion, please, of DC1. Councilmember Warpechowski.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. The concerns that the City Council has brought forward regarding the President's policies on a wide variety of areas, including the so-called travel ban, have been discussed widely in front of this body. I think that's why there wasn't a rush to say anything now, because we've said a lot of it. The opportunity to participate in this amicus brief, I think, is a chance to bring the First Amendment challenges forward about the President's policy. In addition to the First Amendment issues that are being brought forward in this amicus brief, I think, for the City of Ann Arbor's economic health, we are a community that depends on being part of a strong international community from many countries, whether they be for students, researchers, family members. And so in addition to being, it's up to the courts to decide, but arguably unconstitutional, the travel ban, I believe, is also very detrimental policy to the economic health and community vibrancy of communities at Ann Arbor, and I'm grateful that we have this opportunity to use hopefully see the checks and balances system within our country to overturn it.
Further discussion of DC1. Councilmember Eden.
So I'm glad to see this come forward. I want to make a couple points about this. First is that the city will incur no cost or legal time, or, any time spent by our legal staff in us signing on to this particular brief. Further, there's no potential for a harmful consequence flowing from us signing on to this, as vengeful as the current administration seems to be. Us expressing an opinion to the Supreme Court about the legality of the travel ban will not come back and threaten any federal funding or have any other significant consequence. On the other hand, this is particularly important to a town like Ann Arbor that is the home of a world-class university where staff and students come from all around the world. And we want our residents in this town to feel comfortable coming and going from anywhere in the world. And having a threat on, such as this travel ban, really does significant harm to the people who come to our town and expect us to be welcoming and expect to be able to come and go from their home countries. So I'm really happy that we're doing this, and I think that this is really a no-lose action on our part. So thank you very much.
Further discussion.
Oh, also,
Yes.
I'd like to be added as co-sponsor.
Further discussion? Councilmember Grant.
Thank you. I'd like to be added as a co-sponsor as well. Last week, I had the privilege in my day job of getting to orient international students from all around the world who were some of the kindest, most intelligent students that I worked with all summer. It takes a lot of bravery, I think, to uproot yourself and come halfway around the world for your education, and even more so to uproot yourself permanently to come to this country. So on days like today, especially in light of the very disappointing news from the White House about DACA, I think it's all the more important that we sign on to an amicus brief like this.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? It is approved. DB1, resolution to approve participation agreement with Washtenaw County Parks and Recreation for the purchase of development rights on the Donald H. Drake Trust property in Lodi Township and appropriate funds not to exceed $174,997 from the Open Space and Parkland Preservation millage proceeds. Moved by Councilman Grant, second by Councilman Ackerman. Discussion, please, of DB1. Councilman Lum.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There are,
Councilman Lum.
if you want to defer to
You're
someone.
good.
Okay. Yeah, 3 Greenbelt-related purchase of development rights proposals tonight, and I'll speak now to all 3. As you know, I support these Greenbelt acquisitions when the city's tax dollars are leveraged well, and when the local jurisdiction most directly benefiting also participates, in the funding. On 2 of the 3 purchases tonight, DB1 and DB3, that's the case, so I will be supporting both of them. On this one, DB1 in Lodi Township, the city's total commitment is $175,000 and is being matched by a federal grant and county funding. On DB3, the city's commitment is $242,000, or about a third of the purchase price, with comparable contributions from both the county and Ann Arbor Township. DB3 is leveraging local tax dollars very well, and that's good to see. DB2, however, is not leveraged particularly well. The appraised value and purchase price of the property is $184,000. The city's commitment, including paying half the actual purchase price as well as paying the related due diligence, closing, and endowment costs, is up to $143,000, which represents 3/4 of the value of the PDR. This one is in Ann Arbor Township, and I would also like to have seen Ann Arbor Township contribute as they did on DB3, but that's not happening on this one. So I'll be supporting DB1 and DB3, but not DB2. Thanks.
Any further discussion of DB1? Roll call vote, please, starting with Councilman Frenzel.
Yes.
Councilmember Frenzel,
Yes.
Councilmember Westfall,
Yes.
Councilmember Lum,
Yes?
Councilmember Grant,
Yes.
Councilmember Ackerman,
Yes.
Mayor Taylor,
Yes.
Councilmember Eaton,
Yes.
Councilmember Crapo,
Yes.
Councilmember Warpahowski,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Kalasapathy,
Yes.
motion carries.
With meeting the 8 vote requirement, I should say. DB2, resolution to approve the purchase of development rights on the Sealy Farm LLC property in Ann Arbor Township, to approve participation in agreement with Washtenaw County Parks and Recreation to appropriate funds not to exceed $143,367 from the Open Space Parkland Preservation Village proceeds. Moved by Councilmember Grant, seconded by Councilmember Ackerman. Discussion, please, of DB2. Councilmember Grant.
Thank you. This property is unusual for the Greenbelt in that it wasn't able to leverage as much funding as we usually would like to see. However, the Greenbelt Commission felt strongly about supporting this property. The property owners had tried to work with the township prior to this agreement. It, for various reasons, did not work out, so they came back to the Greenbelt Commission. This property not only is an organic farm, and so it meets preservation criteria, it also meets a goal of the Greenbelt Commission, which is to support local farmers and local food production. In addition, this property scored in the top 25% of all potential Greenbelt properties and protects watershed as well. So although the Greenbelt Commission would have preferred to see money come from the township, they felt that this was still an important property. Oh, and it's also contiguous to a number of other protected properties as well. Thank you.
Further discussion of DB2. Councilmember Eaton.
So is there staff or maybe a council member who could explain why we were unable to leverage this particular purchase? Why the township was unwilling to participate?
Good evening, and I'm afraid I don't, beyond the fact that petitioner was trying to reach an agreement with the township, was unable to. I don't know the specifics about why they were unable to.
There were restrictions on the agreement that were not amenable to the property owner.
I'm
And
sorry, what?
There were restrictions that the township wanted to place on the land that didn't work for the property owner to be able to continue long-term with successful farming on that property.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Further discussion? Councilmember Frenzel.
I'd also like to note that while preserving agriculture in any way is valued and important to this initiative, this is one of the few participants that we've had who are young farmers. And those of you who are not familiar, farming is an aging out of place scenario that is of great concern, and supporting our local young entrepreneurial farmers is of inherent value also.
Further discussion? Roll call vote, starting with Councilmember Frenzel.
Councilmember Frenzel,
Yes.
Councilmember Westfall,
Yes.
Councilmember Lum,
No.
Councilmember Grand,
Yes.
Councilmember Ackerman,
Yes.
Mayor Taylor,
Yes.
Councilmember Eaton,
No.
Councilmember Crapel,
Yes.
Councilmember Warpahowski,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Kalasapathy,
Yes.
motion carries.
DB3, resolution to approve participation agreement with Ann Arbor Township and Washtenaw County Parks and Recreation for the purchase of development rights on the Stiles Chaldean property in Ann Arbor Township, and appropriate funds not to exceed $242,500 from the Open Space and Parkland Preservation Millage proceeds. Moved by Councilmember Grand, seconded by Councilmember Ackerman. Discussion, please, of DB3. Roll call vote, please, starting with Councilmember Frenzel.
Councilmember Frenzel,
Yes.
Councilmember Westfall,
Yes.
Councilmember Lum,
Yes.
Councilmember Grand,
Yes.
Councilmember Ackerman,
Yes.
Mayor Taylor,
Yes.
Councilmember Eaton,
Yes.
Councilmember Crapel,
Yes.
Councilmember Warpahowski,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Kalasapathy,
Yes.
motion carries.
DB4, resolution to approve the distribution of the draft plan, the Tree Line Allen Creek Urban Trail Master Plan. Moved by Councilmember Smith, seconded by Councilmember Crapel. Discussion, please, of DB4. Councilmember Lum.
Just a couple questions. I appreciate the responses to the two questions I sent in this morning. And I'd just like to follow up a bit on those. See Mr. Slotin here. Thank you. Thank you very much. First, in terms of the next steps, I had seen the phasing strategy section in the master plan that you referenced and copied in the response, but I was actually looking for my question, and I probably wasn't clear, so I'm sorry. What I was looking for is what are the specific next steps and sequence in beginning the implementation phase? And what is the timing for those steps? And then lastly, how much funding is required for those specific steps, and where will it come from?
So by the implementation, meaning past the point of the actual master plan amendment and adoption.
Well, the sequence in the implementation phase, right? The timing, yeah.
Is your mic on?
There we go. Thank you, Councilmember. So the plan doesn't have a specific date spelled out, implementation plan down to specific sites or timeframes, but the chapter that was included with the response is meant to guide forming that implementation, and particularly first focusing on the northern phase section of the trail,
Right.
and looking at those opportunities, and to develop the specific steps for implementing the trail. So the master plan sets the framework and the direction for the trail. And then the next level of detail is to get into those detailed locations where easements are acquired or street rights-of-way are utilized and to begin work on those designs that way. So I'm not sure if I can,
So to be a little more,
Clear enough.
maybe a little more specific, the intent, after we go through the review process, is to bring the plan with its comments and adjustments back to council January, right after the first
yes,
of the
so if
year.
it's in terms of timing
So
of this
you'll see it-
process, yes,
you'll
we can
see it
speak
come
to
back.
Yeah,
that.
just,
but-
yeah, trying to
Yeah.
understand the specific, how and when we're going to begin.
And if
Oh,
I could,
okay.
if I could add to that, I think you're aware that we've been working with the Allen Creek Conservancy, and they have committed to provide a business plan towards the end of September. Those two documents together, when they're brought back to council, I think will provide a better path forward and give you some of the details that you're looking for. The goal this evening is to go through the state-required process to
yeah.
get this out in the hands for review. But, I think all of us are committed to making sure this becomes a plan that's implemented sooner rather than later, and doesn't sit on a shelf and
Yeah.
and gather dust. We are looking at the ability to raise private money, as well as perhaps bring some city property in to provide secure funding for design and construction. And I hope that we can provide clarity to that process when we bring both back the master plan and the business plan back to council.
Okay, that's good. So I think it would be helpful, to get it a little more granular and, and give us information on how much funding is required for those specific steps and the funding sources. Yeah, again, you understand, I just, trying to understand. Again, I understand it's a phased approach, but understand, how and when we're going to begin more specifically. The question in terms of the stakeholders, I saw the page in the master plan that summarized their positions. But again, I was looking for a bit more specificity on, and I know that this is, just to distribute this great document more broadly, but whether there are any job stoppers from the standpoint of Watco or the U of M, or whether there's been any recent discussions.
Well, I would add to what was provided in the written document, in that the preferred alignment that's included in the plan and what's being asked to go out for formal review by neighboring jurisdictions is sensitive to what those discussions have led us to. And that both parties, as well as other property owners, are comfortable with how that's provided as far as the preferred alignment. So there's more work to be done as the project evolves and things get implemented over time with more detail, but the parties and the stakeholders that have been part of it are comfortable with what's being
So no job
presented.
stoppers, again, from Watco or the U of M?
Not at a master planning level of detail, no.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much.
Further discussion of DB4? Councilor Lemon.
And just, I'd like to thank everybody, the whole Allen Creek Urban Trail team, staff, Mr. Slaughton, you've been a leader on this, Ms. Pulsifer, the Planning Commission, the Allen Creek Greenway Conservancy folks, for a very nice job in pulling this all together so well. It's very well thought out, very thorough, and you've completed the master plan draft on schedule, so that's fantastic. I mean, it's no question, it's been a huge amount of work to get us to this point, and that is obvious from the excellent final draft that you've developed, assuming we approve the resolution tonight, that we'll be distributing to the adjacent jurisdictions for their comment and input. So obviously, I know this will be a long-term project, but completing this master plan, which will serve as the blueprint to move forward, is a very important milestone. So I'm excited about this. I suspect we all are, to move to the next phase of planning for implementation. And so thank you all so very much.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? It is approved. We have communications today from the city attorney. No, Mayor. We have before us the clerk's report of communications, petitions, and referrals. May I have a motion, please? Moved by Councilmember Ackerman, seconded by Councilmember Westfall. Discussion of the clerk's report. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Clerk's report is approved. We now come to public comment general time. Public comment general time is an opportunity for members of the public to speak to council and the community about matters of municipal interest. To speak at public comment general time, one need not have signed up in advance. Speakers will have 3 minutes in which to speak, so please pay close attention to the time clock. As a matter of courtesy, we may have only one person speaking at a time. And finally, if you require assistance in speaking before council, we would be delighted to provide it to you. Is there anyone who'd like to speak at public comment?
Good evening, Kathy Griswold. First, I'd like to acknowledge the tremendous number of improvements that have been made over the summer around the school walk zones. There are still some issues, and I think we're all in agreement about that. I want to talk about community high school because that's an area where there is work to be done by the DDA that I believe has more to do with appearance and creating a grand boulevard than actual safety. But we are getting many emails for the crosswalks on Beeks at 5th, and I can tell you I do not feel safe crossing in my small vehicle on 5th going southbound on 5th. So Beeks is, the message here is Beeks is very, very dangerous in a community like Ann Arbor. It is inexcusable to have this amount of risk. Also, 5th in front of Community High School. 15 years ago, when the Transportation Safety Committee asked for crosswalks for kids to get from Carytown to Community, the city went out and painted 2 parallel lines across 5th and 2 parallel lines across Detroit Street. Now what we have is a crosswalk on 5th going to Detroit Street and no crosswalk on 5th. I do love those little in-street crosswalk signs, the R16A. They state local law, stop for stick figure pedestrian within crosswalk. Nowhere does it say anything about the curb line, or the curb ramp. This is a problem. If you say a lie 50 times, someone starts to believe it. However, our local ordinance does not improve safety. If it did, there would be other communities that had this language. There is no one in the world that has this language. No one. We have it because the former mayor wanted to appear to be pedestrian safety without spending the money on pedestrian infrastructure. So we need to start having honest conversations because I'm getting old and children are dying and the community is getting fed up with the political gamesmanship. We deserve safe pedestrian infrastructure. Now, the other issue is Congresswoman Debbie Dingell and much of the world is moving forward with autonomous vehicles, and Ann Arbor wants to be the leader. If we have, and they're being tested in Ann Arbor right now, are they following the local ordinance? Nobody knows. If we have a pedestrian killed or seriously injured by an autonomous vehicle in Ann Arbor, it will be worldwide news. Not only will we have the terrible situation where we've lost a life, but the autonomous vehicle program could be at risk, delayed, and we will lose hundreds of high-tech jobs. This is high stakes. We've got to get together and do it right now. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who'd like to speak at public comment?
Hi, my name is Edward Gilmetti. I'd like to make a comment related to the clerk's report, specifically the Local Development Finance Authority Advisory Board, Authority Board, actually, that meets periodically at the city to advise it on its economic development activities. I note that on August 15th, the board met. You haven't seen the minutes for that yet, but you will at the next, sometime soon. That's not a concern. The concern was that that particular meeting, the agenda had not been posted at the time that the meeting was held in Legistar. I note this because I asked for it and was able to get a copy of it the next day through a request to one of the members of the board. Great, and thank you for doing that. It's important for all meetings that promptly meeting agendas and supporting documents get posted to Legistar. It's the best system we have for keeping the public informed about matters of municipal interest that don't necessarily get people out to a meeting at 8:15 in the morning. But it is important that these documents get put online. And when I asked about it, I was told that the person who had been previously uploading and sending me documents related to this meeting had retired from the city last December, and that the replacement was still being trained on that. I'm just looking forward to the city's normal good practices being followed when important meetings happen, because I can't go to all these meetings, but I want to read about them. I don't think it's unreasonable to ask that members of the public be at least as well informed as members of the boards and commissions when these meetings happen, because there might be something that needs attention that is beyond the scope of what people who are in these boards can do, and without prompt public notice of what the agendas are, and especially without supporting documents, it's impossible to keep track. So good luck and thanks.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak at public comment? Seeing no one, public comment is closed. Do we have communications today from council? Councilmember Warpahowski.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. I would just like to note that regarding legislation requiring motorists to wait for drivers, regarding crosswalk legislation, the Federal Highway Safety Administration has a guidebook on creating pedestrian safety action plans. This guidebook was one of the foundational documents for establishing our Pedestrian Safety and Access Task Force. In that document, in Chapter 5, Selecting Safety Solutions, it talks about reviewing laws regarding traffic safety, and it reads, for example, statutes that require drivers to yield to a pedestrian standing on the curb at a crosswalk are stronger than those that say you must only yield to pedestrians in the crosswalk. So from the Federal Highway Administration, Federal Highway Safety Administration, where there's guidance supporting legislation that requires motorists to yield or stop for pedestrians so that they can get across the street. This document, based on this recommendation and other sources, when our own Pedestrian Safety and Access Task Force reviewed our crosswalk ordinance, their recommendation was to keep it in place as written. So based on both the recent federal guidance as well as the more recent local review of our ordinance, there is a basis for keeping it. I would add that the federal document also goes on to say that any changes or additions need to be publicized to the public to have any positive effect. And that's why I'm very grateful that the administrator has taken the initiative to very proactively do education on the ordinance so that it can have that community buy-in, that community knowledge, and that positive effect. Thank you.
Further communication from council. Councilmember Lum.
Just to carry on this conversation, and obviously we will have an opportunity to talk about this at length, given what Councilmember Eaton will be proposing. It sounds like at our next council meeting, this will be added to the agenda. And thank you for bringing that forward, Councilmember Eaton. I would just note in terms of this enforcement issue in question, I think there's no question that our local ordinance is unique. And it's so unique that the University of Michigan enforces state code, not our local ordinance. So it is, I am, it's not clear to me, and I did submit a question or two about this about a month ago, when this, before this, the initial enforcement was kicked off, and asking, you know, what precisely we would be enforcing with this effort that's been underway, you know, where we're, at least we're posting that that we have these various checkpoints where we're checking vehicles and pedestrians and monitoring how well the crosswalk, pedestrian crosswalk ordinance is being observed and adhered to, and yet I submitted questions, and maybe because this is an enforcement effort, people are being ticketed. It was not clarified, I'm sorry to say, what exactly we are enforcing when we pull people over and give them a ticket. I think that would be very helpful to have clarity on that, which is why I asked initially. So any additional information that can be provided us all on that front would be helpful. Thanks.
Further communication from council?
An executive.
At the risk of extending this conversation, I guess I'll include some communications for myself with, it's not clear whether the mayor's included in council in this context, but with your permission, I'll just weigh in. The University of Michigan is in the, has as its, complies with none of our ordinances. And so, you know, it is their constitutional prerogative to not comply with city ordinances. And yes, and so their compliance with this ordinance, I think, would be seen as, at least within their walls, as a precedent-setting situation that they might not wish to do from a larger strategic perspective without regard to the particularities of this or the wisdom of this one way or the other. Further communication from council. Do we have today a closed session?
Yes, we do, Mayor. We have a closed session under the Michigan Open Meetings Act. It's for pending litigation, and it's also for regarding the purchase or lease of real property.
May I have a motion, please, to go into closed session? Moved by Councilmember Ackerman, seconded by Councilmember Grand. Discussion? Roll call vote, please, starting with Councilmember Frenzel.
Councilmember Frenzel?
Yes, please.
Councilmember Westfall?
Yes.
Councilmember Lum?
Yes.
Councilmember Grand?
Yes.
Councilmember Ackerman?
Yes.
Mayor Taylor?
Yes.
Councilmember Eaton?
Yes.
Councilmember Crapel?
Yes.
Councilmember Warpahowski?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Kalasapati? Yes. Motion carries.
We are in closed session. open session. May I have a motion, please, to adjourn? Moved by Councilmember Eden, seconded by Councilmember Westfall. Discussion? All in favor? All opposed? We are adjourned.